is the great Doug Kyed of the Boston Herald, who joins me right now on the Christian Arcand Show. Doug, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Wouldn't Eton sanity be better than Chisum sanity?
That would be better. See, this is why. See, first of all,
Yeah.
Boston Herald headline guy right there. I mean, that was pretty good. That for the brief time I worked at the Herald, I knew I wasn't going to last there, Doug, because I'm bad at headlines. I'm bad at coming up with stuff like that. You're good at it, which is clearly why you've had such a nice career there so far.
I appreciate the kind words, Christian. Yes, if that's the best thing I can do, I'll take it. Yeah.
Efton sanity. It's way better. It's way better. All right, let's. I do want to talk about Chisum because I do think that this whole thing has the potential to be very interesting. But let's go ahead and start with the other wide receiver who was in the news this week, Stefon Diggs. Sounds like this whole thing is basically blown over. Any residual effects that you think maybe was this like one strike for him? Where do you think if there's maybe another transgression that this could go?
I don't know. I think it would have to be a pretty bad transgression. And, throughout Stefon Diggs' career, there's been little stuff like this, maybe not even to this level, but he's never really been a huge problem. So, yeah, maybe you consider this one strike, and then maybe things get a little bit more serious if there's something else. But I would be pretty surprised if it got to that level. But, I would say the biggest concern here is that there are a lot of young wide receivers in that room, and a lot of them did not show a lot of maturity last year. So my one concern would be all right, you let Stefon Diggs get away with one. Does that also tell them that they can get away with one? Yeah,
that's a very fair point. How do you think, or do you have any impression about how the conversation with him and Mike Vrabel went and sort of what was discussed, how it was sort of treated as opposed to if it was one of these younger wide receivers, how he talked to a veteran?
No, I really don't know how those conversations went. I think they're trying to keep things close to the vest there with the Stefon Diggs situation right now, but did certainly think it was notable that wasn't there last week, then comes back this week. Seems like they might have just wanted to either, have him stay away or not be a distraction or whatever it was last week. But then I think it was a good sign, at least, that he was back in the building and back at practice this week.
I saw some videos of him moving around. I don't know exactly where he is in his rehab timeline here, but it looks like he's doing pretty well there. It looked like he was moving pretty well for a guy coming off that injury.
I agree. He's moving really quickly, really fast. I compare it to Kendrick Bourne from last year, because they tore their ACLs. Both of them tore their ACLs in late October. Bourne in 2023, Diggs in 2024. Bourne was doing nothing last spring. Bourne didn't even return until week 5 of the season. Stefon Diggs, he's out there. He's not doing team drills yet, obviously, so he's not 100%, but he's looking good in individual drills. He's off to the side while the rest of the team is doing individual drills, doing team drills, and he's still working out. He's still looking fast. So certainly looks like he's ahead of schedule, or at least significantly ahead of the schedule that Kendrick Bourne was on last year. And I mean, if things continue to progress this way, I would expect him to be out there in week 1. It would be a slight disappointment almost, I would say, at this point if he wasn't out there in week 1.
That would be great. We're talking with Doug Kyed of the Boston Herald. Doug, I know it's passing camp still, and it's tough to really get a whole lot from it, but based on last year, what you saw with Drake Maye and the new coaching staff as opposed to this year, any big differences stand out?
There's one, and obviously all these things are kind of minor, but no 7-on-7s that we've seen so far. They're going straight to 11-on-11.
Interesting.
Which sounds minor, and you really don't know exactly what to take away from it. But I think the one thing is that it helps team building. They're all on the field together. You're not separating the offensive linemen and defensive linemen, having them do their own thing on the other side of the field. Maybe we'll see that a little bit more during the summer, but yeah, everyone's all together. It's a ton of 11-on-11s. I think they're teaching everyone the whole offense. I think it's smart to do it that way. And even some of the coaches were crediting Mike Vrabel with helping Will Campbell by doing that, because there's just so much teamwork so far this spring rather than that individual work. So I think that he's nailing the playbook a little bit better than some rookies just because of the way that they're structuring practice.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. On the subject of the rookies, Will Campbell, Henderson, Williams, we were just talking about here, the big 3 of the offense that were drafted with those first 3 picks. How have they looked so far, and do they seem as though, you're talking about first-day starters in some cases here, or maybe in all 3 cases?
Will Campbell, yes, I would expect him to be a day one starter. It's hard to gauge offensive line during this time of year just because they're not in pads. But I mean, he's been a mainstay at left tackle. I would expect that to stay the same way during the summer unless things drastically change and you really start struggling. Trevion Henderson, really fast, really explosive. I think that he'll probably be a change of pace back right off the bat behind Ramondre Stevenson. But I think that he's got the potential take on a bigger role as the season goes along. He's had some weird drops during individual periods that haven't really shown up in team drills yet, so that's the only slight concern, but otherwise he looks good. And Kyle Williams, very heavily involved, but hasn't stood out maybe quite the way that other wide receivers have so far. But, I mean, you see the speed off the line of scrimmage. That wide receiver group is just so wide open right now that I certainly would not be surprised if he was starting, just because, outside of Stefon Diggs, feels like almost anyone in that group could be a week one starter. There's really not a lot of clarity beyond Stefon Diggs.
Especially Eton Chisum, who has just been setting the world on fire. What's been so good about Chisum? We heard that blurb just now, but what stood out about him when you watch him in the passing camps?
Yeah, I mean, he's just heavily involved. He's out there with all three quarterbacks. He's getting on the field early. I've heard that he's picking up the offense really quickly. He's been really consistent. So I think that's obviously a good sign for him. Good sign to get an undrafted wide receiver like that in there. He got 7 passes on 7 targets in the last practice, which far outnumbered any other Patriots receiver at that OTA session. So it was hard not to notice him. And he really felt like he was kind of a cheat code for the quarterbacks out there that all right, if we need a quick completion, you can just throw it to Eton Chisum, which you don't necessarily expect that out of an undrafted free agent. One way that would pump the brakes is that we do see some of these guys excel during passing camp, excel during OTAs before the pads come on, excel during minicamp or early in training camp, and then they start to disappear. So that's going to be the real test in late July, early August when the pads come on to see if he continues to stand out or maybe pulls a little bit more of a Javon Baker from last year and disappears. But, all things considered right now, the team seems high on him, and he wouldn't be getting snaps with Drake Maye if the team wasn't high on him.
What are your early impressions of Drake Maye so far in terms of his arm, in terms of his body language, his rapport with the teammates, all of that? Where do you stand with him right now?
I think it's good. I think the positive about Drake Maye is that he's improving. It was really rough to see him throw 4 interceptions in his first 8 attempts when we were out there the first week of OTAs. And then last week it was, a little bit better, but still his accuracy was a little bit off because his accuracy was so good during his rookie season that it was kind of shocking to see a lot of high passes, some throws near players' feet. And then last practice he was 14 of 16. Looked like a completely different player. Was hitting a lot of easy stuff early, but then, hit some guys a little bit deeper as practice went along, deep slants, wheel routes, those types of things. So starting to open up the offense a little bit more, and it seems like he's getting more comfortable. So we'll see where he's at next week when we get 3 days of minicamp and see if he can continue that upward trajectory. But I think that's what you want to see when you're working with a new offensive coordinator in an entirely new offense, is just progression from week to week, and we've certainly seen that.
Very good. All right, before we let you go here, Doug, I think a lot of people came into this camp and this offseason thinking that once the team got together and everybody was out there doing 11-on-11s and things like that, no pads, but out there running around, the defense was going to seem as though they were a bit ahead of the offense. Would you agree with that assessment? Do you think the defenses, just as a group, seemed a little bit more further along in the process, even at this early stage maybe, than the offense looks?
Certainly the case the first 2 weeks, less so this week, but you also didn't have Carlton Davis out there at cornerback. You didn't have Marcus Jones. Kyle Duggar still not out there. So they're getting a lot of different guys rotating into the defense. So I thought they took a step back a little bit in week 3. I'm still a little bit concerned about the depth overall on defense. I'm not going to lie. I don't think they've got a ton of depth at corner. Don't think they have a ton of depth at defensive tackle, maybe linebacker, but I think that the starters are good. They've built a good foundation of starters. I would just start to get concerned if you see more and more injuries in that group to see if that depth can continue to stack up.
Speaking of injuries, Jelani Tavai went down with an injury, a guy who last year certainly didn't endear himself much to the fans, but you never want to see anybody go down. What's the diagnosis there? And as you said, you're concerned about depth of linebacker. There could be a need for that right away, right now.
Yeah. The injury to his calf. It seems like he'll be out until training camp. We'll see if he's out there or if he has to start the summer on PUP. But yeah, he was getting a lot of first team reps on defense, which was a little bit surprising, just because I didn't think that he necessarily fit the typical body type of a Mike Vrabel linebacker. But I also, before he even went down, I was kind of slotting in Christian Ellis as the starter next to Robert Spillane. We've actually seen Marte Mapu. He's been a hybrid linebacker safety over the years. Seems like he might be moving a little bit more towards the linebacker group, so that adds a little bit more depth there. But no, you never like to see a guy go down during OTAs, and it certainly looked worse than it wound up being when he did suffer the injuries. But if he only has to miss, 3 days of minicamp, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
I mean, he can rehab that during the break there.
Very good. That is the voice of Doug Kyed. Doug, great to talk with you as always.
Can I throw one more thing in?
Absolutely.
So just real quick, it's the last day of our fundraiser.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. You know what? I knew about this. I know you've been talking about this, and I had meant to mention something about discussing this, so I'm glad. Please, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you letting me do this. You can either go to my Twitter, you can Google Doug Kyed LLS, you can go to princesshallyforever.com. It's the last day that we're raising money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. It's going really, really well, but obviously we want to raise as much money as possible. So if anyone out there is listening and wants to donate to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, it's in honor of our daughter Hallie, who passed away of AML at the beginning of January 2024. We're trying to raise as much money for cancer research so that other families don't have to go through this. So definitely a really important cause for us, and we've loved all the support that we've gotten so far. That's
absolutely a very, very noble cause. You and your family, very, very strong people, Doug. I've thought that every day, basically. Can you give the links again and the info?
Yep, absolutely. PrincessHallieForever.com. Hallie is spelled Hallie, or like I said, you can just Google Doug Kyed LLS, and the page will come up there. So, it means a lot to our family, and I really appreciate the kind words. And the support from everyone in Boston sports media and around the country has been fantastic.
All right, Doug Kyed, thanks so much, and yes, go out there and make a donation, absolutely, to this very noble cause. Doug, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely, thanks, Christian.
All right, Doug Kyed of the Boston Herald joining us here.